After bread has been secured, leisure is the supreme aim. Man is not a being whose exclusive purpose in life is eating, drinking, and providing a shelter for himself. As soon as his material wants are satisfied, other needs, which, generally speaking, may be described as of an artistic and scientific nature, will thrust themselves forward. Peter Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread, published in 1892, is far more than a political manifesto. It serves as a tactical architecture for the immediate aftermath of social collapse, while other revolutionary texts of the 19th century, most notably the Iron Script of Marx's Das Kapital, focused on the systemic noise of historical materialism and the inevitability of class conflict. Kropotkin's work serves a different, more visceral purpose. It is a manual for survival that prioritizes the still point of human biology, the stomach, the hearth, and the home. It serves as a warning that any revolution that fails to provide bread on the first day is a revolution destined for the systemic catastrophe of a new tyranny. The first point we see is the synthesis of collective heritage and human necessity. Kropotkin's primary thesis rests on an ontological reset of property, the belief that all wealth is a systemic synthesis of the labor of past generations, meaning that any ceramic cage of private ownership is a moral and historical impossibility. He argues that because every tool, field, and discovery is a shared inheritance, the first duty of a society is not the preservation of the law, but the marrow-deep fulfillment of the right to well-being. By prioritizing the still point of biological security, ensuring that bread, shelter, and clothing are guaranteed to all, Kropotkin seeks to fill the pressurized void of poverty, asserting that a revolution succeeds only when it secures the basic material foundations required for human dignity. This brings us to the transition from survival to the luminous life. Once the physical needs are met, Kropotkin identifies the illusion of the wage as a systemic erasure of the worker's humanity, treating individuals as mere hands rather than the heroic hearts of a global community. He highlights an invisible infrastructure of interdependence, where the survival of one is inextricably linked to the labor of all, suggesting that the iron script of competition must be replaced by the spontaneous order of free agreement. The ultimate aim of this transition is the final homecoming of the human spirit, the right to luxury. By reducing the systemic noise of unnecessary toil, society creates the link of beauty needed for leisure, allowing every soul to transcend the nebulous veil of survival and pursue the artistic, scientific, and creative endeavors that define a truly liberated existence. All belongs to all things are for all, since all men have need of them, since all men have worked in the measure of their strength to produce them, and since it is not possible to evaluate everyone's part in the production of the world's wealth. This passage serves as the definitive rejection of both private property and the wage system, grounding Kropotkin's anarchist-communism in a blend of historical debt and practical necessity. It stands for the idea of collective inheritance, asserting that because every modern convenience, from the fertile field to the complex machine, is the result of centuries of accumulated human labor and scientific discovery, no individual can justly claim exclusive ownership of the means of production. By stating that all men have need of them, Kropotkin elevates the right to well-being above the right to work, suggesting that survival should be a birthright, rather than something one must earn through exploited labor. Furthermore, the line highlights the indivisibility of labor in a world where the miner, the engineer, the farmer, and the transport worker are all inextricably linked. It is mathematically and morally impossible to isolate and price an individual's specific contribution. Therefore, Kropotkin concludes that the only rational and just response to this complexity is a society based on taking from the pile, where the total stock of human wealth is freely available to satisfy the needs of every individual, regardless of their specific output. The first pillar of this work serves to dismantle the myth of scarcity by asserting that the right to well-being is the only legitimate still point for a functioning society. Kropotkin argues that since all modern wealth from the tilled soil of the fields to the complex machinery of the factory is a shared inheritance built upon the labor of countless generations, no individual has a moral claim to gatekeep these resources. This marrow-deep reclamation is not merely a political shift, but a biological imperative. It suggests that a revolution's primary objective must be the immediate provision of bread for every citizen. By filling the pressurized void of poverty through the collective ownership of the invisible infrastructure, society moves from a state of systemic erasure to one where the fundamental dignity of the human body is finally protected from the cold indifference of the market. Once the systemic noise of hunger and homelessness is silenced, the work shifts toward its luminous conclusion, the transition from survival to the right to luxury. Kropotkin posits that the ultimate goal of human progress is not the endless accumulation of goods, but the final homecoming of the mind and spirit. By optimizing labor and removing the iron script of the wage system, the workday is drastically reduced, allowing the heroic heart of every individual to emerge from the nebulous veil of drudgery. This leisure is the link of beauty that connects the common worker to the realms of science, art, and philosophy, pursuits once reserved for a brittle fortress of the elite. In this view, luxury is not an excess but a vital component of the human experience, representing the moment when a society transcends mere existence to achieve a state of systemic harmony and true intellectual liberation. Drawing on his background as a naturalist, Kropotkin argues that mutual aid is the true engine of evolution. He views the state as a brittle fortress that creates conflict to justify its own existence. Kropotkin vigorously opposes the international division of labor, which he sees as a system that reduces entire nations to narrow, dependent roles, such as England serving as the world's factory, while Russia or India serve as its farm. He argues that this specialization creates artificial dependencies and economic vulnerability. Instead, he advocates for a radical localism, where every region strives for self-sufficiency by producing its own food and manufactured goods locally. This vision is supported by his theory of the integration of labor, a concept that breaks down the barrier between the brain worker and the manual worker. Kropotkin envisions a society where industry is moved into the countryside, allowing people to combine intellectual pursuits with physical agriculture. By utilizing intensive farming techniques and local small-scale manufacturing, communities can eliminate the waste of long-distance transport and ensure that work is varied, creative, and directly beneficial to the local population. Kropotkin's philosophy asserts that because all wealth is a shared inheritance created by the collective labor of past generations, society's first duty is to guarantee the right to well-being for every individual. By securing basic necessities like food and shelter, the community eliminates the burden of survival and establishes a foundation of dignity for all. Once these material needs are met, the focus shifts to the right to luxury, where a shorter workday allows people to pursue science, art, and personal interests. This transition ensures that human life is defined not by endless drudgery, but by the freedom to engage in creative and intellectual fulfillment. Ultimately, this vision is not merely a blueprint for economic reorganization, but a profound reclamation of the human soul. It recognizes that every loaf of bread and every scientific breakthrough is a gift from the countless, often nameless, ancestors whose sweat and genius paved our way. To demand well-being for all is to finally honor that shared inheritance and to quiet the systemic noise that has for too long told the worker they are worth only what they can produce. When we break the iron script of survival and secure the right to luxury, we are doing more than filling stomachs. We are awakening the heroic heart within every individual. This is the final homecoming, a world where the link of beauty is accessible to everyone, and where the luminous potential of the human spirit is no longer a privilege of the few, but the birthright of all. It is a call to move from a state of mere existence into a life defined by creative sovereignty and the enduring light of collective dignity.